live and direct from anywhere in the world. It's The Kelley Show with Dr. Kelley Mondésir.
Hello and welcome back to The Kelley Show, real people with real stories in real time. And as we're wrapping up the month of October, which is the arts and entertainment issue, I have two incredible guests on today who have the most amazing podcast that's actually global. So you don't want to miss this episode of The Kelley Show. So stay tuned and we'll be right back after word from our sponsor.
This portion of The Kelley Show is being brought to you by White Wolf Advisory Services. We are the bridge between nations, creating growth, commerce and collaboration between cultures. Contact us today for more information.
And welcome back to The Kelley Show, real people with real stories in real time. And as I teased to you before, I've got two really great gents coming onto the show today. They're in the green room. They're getting ready to tell us all about their global podcast, which is incredible, and talk about how they got there. So, welcome to the show, my dear friends, John Lee and Martin Nutty, the co-hosts of the Irish Stew podcast. Hi, guys. How are you?
Good to see you, Dr. K.
All right. Martin, good to see you.
Kelley, pleasure to be joining you on your show. So delighted to talk about Irish stew.
Yeah, well, I thank you. I'm very honored you guys decided to come on to my show because I'm one of your biggest fans, as you fellas know. But we'll start from the beginning. Tell me, John, you go first. Where are you from originally, and where in the world are you now?
Well, Kelley, I'm from Connecticut, about 100 miles from New York City, where I am now, married in Connecticut. Lived in Washington, D.C. for a while, but then have spent most of my life here in New York on the Upper West Side.
Okay. And Martin, what's your story?
Well, originally, which you can probably tell from my accent, is I am Irish. I grew up in Dublin, specifically a small agricultural community called Conceely, which is just 8 miles outside of Dublin. There ain't any farms there anymore because Dublin's grown dramatically, but that's my home place. And now I've been living in New York for over 40 years in New York City.
And you have quite the voice, my friend, quite the voice. And I want to, full disclosure, to tell our viewers, I met both John and Martin at the Irish Business Organization of New York several years ago. And they were both so kind to welcome me into the New York Irish community. So thanks very much once again. I just want to acknowledge on air your kindness and your friendship. So thank you, my friends. So let's get to it. What the heck did you two guys do before you decided to become the dynamic duo and create the Irish Stew podcast? Martin, you go first.
Well, by trade, I guess my career, like many people's, evolves over years. And but the bulk of my time was actually spent in the financial sector. I'm a data geek by trade.
Wow.
If you want to build spreadsheets or you want to do data analytics, I was the guy that used to do that. But as my career was drawing to a close, I decided to do something totally different. And that begat Irish Stew with my fabulous co-host, John Lee.
Okay. And John, what did you do before you hooked up with the tall guy here?
I used to think I was tall. Kelley, I've had what I would call a checkered career. I started off in Washington, D.C. I worked at the National Gallery of Art. Then moved into the nonprofit sector in a management consulting firm. I started doing more and more writing and editorial work, which led me to write about things I was interested in at the moment, one of which was horse racing. It led me into a protracted stay at the New York Racing Association doing PR and broadcast work for NYRA, Belmont Park, Saratoga. And then I plugged into a more buttoned-down career in public relations, working for a company called Goodman Media. And then, like Martin, kind of looking for maybe a more creative outlet, we found each other with similar ideas of how to do a podcast that reached out to what we call the global Irish nation.
So tell me, where did you two meet, and what sparked the idea of the Irish Stew podcast, and what is its basic mission statement? What's the objective of Irish Stew? And love the logo, by the way. Absolutely love the logo.
We met originally in the Irish consulate in New York. And at the time, I was casting around for a partner in crime to do the kind of programming that we ended up doing. I'd played around with the podcast form a little bit and had come to some kind of technical understanding of what was required to deliver something with decent audio, etc. In terms of what we are doing on the podcast specifically, I like to say that we talk to accomplished Irish people about why they do what they do. And when I talk about Irish people, I usually refer to what I call big church Irish, meaning the Irish of Ireland itself, but they're hyphenated cousins. So Canadian Irish, Irish American, etc. And so the idea is that we want to communicate, as John mentioned, this notion of a global Irish nation. Collectively, we are much stronger together than we are looking at each other as independent entities. We are obviously different from each other, but we're connected.
Brilliant, brilliant. John, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, it's just that Martin and I, had lunch one day, and we found out we were both thinking about similar kinds of podcasts. Martin was several steps further in the podcasting journey, but I had worked for a guy as his podcast producer, more from the editorial side, a guy named Jeffrey Hazlett, who was an early guest of ours. And when I was working for him, I kind of came up with a concept of a podcast that, turns out to be not too far from what we're doing here on Irish Stew now. And you mentioned the logo. If you get a chance to look at it, you see it's sort of a place marker in Ireland, the globe rotating in that stew ball, and you see these kind of lines radiating out from Ireland. And the idea is the lines go both ways. They're the diaspora heading out into the greater world, and it's the connections of the diaspora back into Ireland.
Sensational, sensational. Well, you both have had quite the adventures, and we have a few photos we want to put up. And if you could tell us what is going on, who this person is in the first photo. Gareth, put that first photo up, would you please? Thank you. Now, for those out there that don't know who this woman is, this fine young lady, okay, one of you take it away. Who is she? Where is she? Why does she have a clarinet?
I can sort this out for you. She's a place that none of us have ever been. That's the Earth rotating above her there. She's astronaut Katie Coleman. We had her on twice on Irish Stew. I'm a real astronaut fanboy, so I was so thrilled to get her on. She's a fantastic person, an amazing story, a petite woman who took on the big boys and triumphed. And what you see there is the tin whistle of Paddy Maloney and the wooden flute of Matt Malloy, the stalwarts of the Chieftains. And she took those up in the International Space Station with them and played them both on St. Patrick's Day in outer space.
Wow. Now, did you get a recording of this on your show?
We did some, I'm trying to remember exactly what we covered. She also did a kind of a live feed with Jethro Tull at a concert. So she plays frequently with the Chieftains, and she plays in an astronaut band, and amazing down-to-earth person, and just like stuff. She's accomplished things I couldn't imagine.
That is so neat. And we have another photo we want to put up. Now, who are these folks? Where is this? And that looks like a fine Irish bar to me.
Martin, I'll take the first half of this one. That's Giovanni Buttigieg. He is the ambassador to Ireland from the country of Malta. Okay. And he describes himself as being from the island of Malta and the Ireland of Malta. He's in a community in Malta which calls itself the Ireland of Malta. Their football team is the Floriana Irish. They wear green and white uniforms, and there's quite a tale for why they became so Irish. That's his wife with him. And Martin, maybe you could kind of give the setting of where we are this day and what it meant to us.
Yeah, that photo was taken in a place called Smiths of Ranelagh in Dublin. And it was taken earlier this year because we were in Dublin celebrating the fact that we had won an award in a competition, or if you will, an award ceremony called the Irish Podcast Awards. We were listed as Best Society and Culture Podcast there. And so what we decided to do was have a party and invite some of our guests that are Irish based. Obviously, we operate out of New York, so it was a real opportunity to pull people together. We met Giovanni when he had been assigned to the United Nations in New York, but he had since then moved on to Dublin. We had quite the crowd that night, a variety of different people across, a broad spectrum of areas of interest and expertise. And it was just, as they say, good crack in Dublin. And that's crack spelled CRAIC, which is the Gaelic for fun, not a sadly abused drug in some other quarters.
And he was a podcast guest of ours, and on the podcast he reads a Seamus Heaney poem in his Maltese accent. Really charming.
That's great. Yeah, thank you, Martin, for explaining what the Irish crack is as opposed to CRACK. Now, I have a question now. John and Martin, you take your show on the road, which is highly commendable. And I asked you prior to coming on air today, how do you do it? How do you record a podcast on the road for people like me? I come from, television. And for the viewers who don't know, how do you do it? Are you like talking into a phone, whatever? And Martin, maybe while John is getting the equipment out, maybe Martin, you can explain what this equipment is, how it's used, and could you do that for us now?
Yeah, sure. Well, John's picking this thing up, and you can see it looks a little bit like a tea kettle, which flips open. It's called No Mono, which is a Norwegian company. It has a little central recording device. It looks like a cube that John is holding up, and then 4 individual microphones, which wirelessly connect into that central device. And so all you have to do is clip on those microphones, find a quiet place, clip on the microphones, and hit the record button, and off you go.
And you can do a live recording as long as you have Wi-Fi?
You don't even need Wi-Fi. You just record. It records up to 10 hours of programming, and then when you get back to a Wi-Fi connection, it uploads to the cloud.
Wow, that's amazing. And John, may I just add, you could get a job as a flight attendant because the way you demonstrated, it was just like the seatbelt. And
I was exactly what I was thinking. Oh my God. Hey, maybe something for Aer Lingus, Martin. We could do their safety video.
Maybe now here's an idea. Maybe that Gareth wants to know, is Gareth saying in the earpiece, where are the emergency exits, John?
I found my calling finally.
But hey, I just thought of the idea. Maybe you could talk to Aer Lingus, and if anybody at Aer Lingus is listening right now, maybe you could be on, one of the channels that Aer Lingus provides for their guests, the people who fly on Aer Lingus. Wouldn't that be fun? Because since you are taking the show on the road, you're talking about all different types of places in Ireland, the expats and what's going on. You have such interesting guests that while they're in the friendly skies, they can hear about the astronauts that's playing the penny whistle in deep space. So, keep that in mind. And if that happens, you get paid like remember yours truly, but I digress. You have a few other places in Ireland you've been to, and we have a photo to put up that's a really cool photo. Who is this man? Where are you? What's going on? Take it away.
This was the first of about 11 stops. We did 11 episodes in Belfast, and this was the first stop of the day. We had just arrived. And it's at the Waterman House restaurant. It's with one of the leading chefs of Belfast, Niall McKenna. He just put out a fabulous cookbook. that we talked about. We met at his restaurant. We had a great time. And then we came back a few days later to have dinner and see what it was all about. And it was well worth it. He was great. These chefs, it's quite a foodie scene in Belfast now, and they are so committed, and they're so committed to the local products. They really pull you into the story.
Yeah, I was up in the north of Ireland a few years back, and I have to say, the food was off the charts amazing, and the produce is so fresh. And quite frankly, I felt like, well, what was running around out back in the afternoon was on my plate that evening and out of the water as well. But we have another photo to put up is here. Who's this guy?
Well, that's a Billy Connolly lookalike. Actually, that was the joke in that particular episode. And again, this is another photo taken during our trip to Belfast last October. The gentleman that I'm talking to is a guy called Michael Stewart, and he was incredible in facilitating a whole bunch of other guests that actually ultimately appeared in the podcast. When you go to Belfast, this gentleman goes by the name, or his title is the Night Tsar of Belfast, and he is charged with bringing nightlife back into Belfast. And he knows everybody, but he's also hilarious. He's a great guy to hang out with in Belfast to kind of get a deeper sense and understanding of the city. Just a wonderful person.
That's wonderful. So let me ask you a question. How do you get your guests to come onto your show? I know you've got a great reputation, but how do you reach out to them? Is it just, by networking, or people come to you and say, hey, I want to be on Irish Stew? How does that work?
Well, I think a lot of it is networking. It's you meet somebody, you say, hey, you sounds like you have an interesting story. We want to have a conversation, see if we can get you on Irish Stew. We get a lot of people coming towards us, particularly authors, and they can be a little tricky for us because there's just so many giant volumes of prose we can read on our own time and then interview successfully and have on a podcast. So we have to be a little bit choosy about authors. We have filmmakers come our way. But we ferret out a lot of them on our own, and people suggest, like Martin mentioned, Michael Stewart suggested some great guests. I would say getting guests has not been a problem. Scheduling guests can be a challenge.
I hear you on that, especially when they're coming from all points of the world. Yeah, my producer Gareth is in Great Britain. I'm on the East Coast of the States, and sometimes we've had people as far away from Australia or Africa or Dubai. I mean, it's tricky with the time changes, and now we have Eastern Daylight Time, Eastern Standard Time here. Yeah, I'm with you. But there's a photo that I selected. Here it is. Thank you, Gareth. Now, Martin, this is a really great photo. I have two questions. One, who took such a great photo? And two, where is this photo taken? Because I think there might be some significance to where you were standing and what the situation was, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that rather sinister looking photo of me, I think I was trying to channel Michael Collins or something, is actually taken in Dublin, and the gentleman behind the camera was none other than John Lee. And the place I'm standing outside is a place called Barney Kiernan's. And for those that are literary types, they might actually recognize that name because Barney Kiernan's was one of the pubs that is featured in James Joyce's Ulysses. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, Barney Kiernan's is no longer in existence, which kind of explains the graffiti behind there. But it is an investment opportunity for those that would dream about opening up a pub in Dublin with strong literary connections. And it's probably one of the most famous scenes, or one of the most famous chapters in Ulysses. So if you've got any Joycean type fans, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about there.
Wow. Maybe they could call the place Book and Brew. Or Poet and Pint.
I like that.
Well, we're going to take a short break now for a word from our sponsors. And we'll be right back with my friends, Martin Nutty and John Lee, the co-hosts of the Irish Stew podcast. So we'll be right back.
This portion of the Kelley Show is being brought to you by White Wolf Advisory Services. We are the bridge between nations, creating growth, commerce and collaboration between cultures. Contact us today for more information.
Welcome back to the Kelley Show, real people with real stories in real time, as my two amazing guests, Mr. John Lee and Mr. Martin Nutty, the co-hosts of the Irish Stew podcast, join me here at the table today. Fellas, this has been a lot of fun, but now I have to ask you, you've been most all over Ireland to do your podcast, and you've had the most incredible guests. I'm jealous, I'm envious, but good for you. However, what's next? Where y'all going next?
Well, Kelley, we'd like to take it back on the road, and the plan is to go to Ireland in the fall with what we call Irish Stew goes off the beaten track in the hidden heartlands, which is the Irish Midlands, the less traveled part of Ireland. Come up with some of that off the beaten track attractions, record 6-7 episodes over there.
Wow, that's wonderful. And I'm sure you're already lining up your agenda and your guests and everything else in between, yes?
Yeah, I think what we want to do in this particular case is go to some of the places that people do not go to as frequently. In America, we talk about flyover states. In Ireland, we talk about drive-through counties. And so instead of driving through these counties, so a lot of times people will just go to Dublin, then they head immediately for the west coast of Ireland to Kerry or Galway or wherever. We're stopping off in the middle, and there are some extraordinary places and extraordinary people to visit. And we are actually going to be in the ancestral home of one John Lee in a county called Offaly in a place called Clara. And so we're looking forward to visiting a little of John's ancestral homeland.
Wonderful. I actually have a trip planned myself for the fall of 2026. I've got a lot of colleagues I've created relationships with over, I call it the motherland. I know you guys don't like that one, but I call it the motherland. But I'm going off to Swinford, which is in County Mayo, and that's where my grandmother comes from. And John, you were helping me out with some of the genealogy there of my grandmother, Mary
Yeah,
Gow.
Martin. Yeah, Martin is a genealogy nerd.
Yes,
as well as a data nerd.
Yes. But I want to say this. I think what you gentlemen are doing is incredible. And I like the fact that you're talking about driving through counties, because the last time I was in Ireland, I was only going from Dublin up to the north. However, I took the time to go on the back roads and drive, and I stupidly brought my own GPS with me, my Garmin, because I thought it was going to work in Ireland, and it didn't. And of course, I didn't have a map. And so I pulled into a gas station or, convenience place at one point, and I needed directions to the north. And it was funny because it was like the Quiet Man when he shows up at the train station and he's asking for the road to, I suppose, Innisfree, and everybody's got their own opinion. Well, there I was at the counter at the checkout of this convenience, and this woman just pulls me aside and she said, "Where's your car?" And I said, "It's out there." She said, "Come with me." I said, "Are you going to take me to the north?" And she said, "Honey, you're already in the north," because there was no sign at the time. I must have missed it. But not only did she take me down some amazing roads that was so lovely and scenic, she got out several times to tell me the history of where we were going, and then gave me the route to take to the hotel I was staying at, a little further north and up the road a piece, I suppose. But people are so kind, they're so warm, they're so wonderful. And even in these little villages, folks, there's so much history and stories and lore and music and dance and warmth. So I would say don't miss the next few episodes when John and Martin go on their way to the Midlands, because you're going to hear from them what you wouldn't get in any tourist book. So I'm just giving you a preview to that. But speaking of that, we have a tradition on the Kelley Show. If you could name one person, place, thing, or experience that you are thankful or grateful for, who or what would it be? John, you go first, please.
Well, Kelley, I thought about it, and I was going to try to cop out here by saying my Irish guides, the folks who I've met along the way who brought me deeper into the Irish story. If I have to pick one person, I'll pick a multiple-time guest of ours, Peter Quinn, an amazing author, historian, humorist, character, and he was instrumental in kind of bringing me into the Irish picture in New York. There were many others, but you asked for one, so I'll say meeting and getting to know Peter Quinn.
Okay, Martin, your turn.
In my case, I'm not going to talk about a prior guest. I'm going to speak about a gentleman called Philip Conway, who happened to be my track and field coach in Ireland. And that's how I fetched up in America. I came on an athletic scholarship. Philip was an Olympian, and he gave freely of his time. He never charged me for any of the coaching advice he gave me. And to this day, we're still in touch, and I've always considered him to be a mentor throughout my life. So a big shout out to all those people that elevate other people, not for personal gain, but just simply the pleasure of seeing others succeed.
Wow, that's lovely. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for being here today. I'm honored that you've been guests on the Kelley Show. John, it was great to see you and your lovely wife up in New York. Martin, I hope to see you back at the consulate, maybe in the fall. I've got my own adventures planned and in the works, but we'll all get together. Maybe we'll get together in Ireland in the springtime, if the three of us can manage something like that. But I want to thank you. And folks, if you would like to reach out to Martin Nutty, John Lee, we've got their beautiful logo up here to share. And you can find them. Now look at this. They are on YouTube, TuneIn, Deezen, Speaker, Spotify, iHeart. Oh my God, podcast, the Castbox. If you can't find them, there's something wrong with you. So reach out to John and Martin. You can comment on any one of these sites. I hope you enjoy their podcast. They've got so many guests and a wonderful library of interviews that they've done. And gentlemen, I want to thank you once again for being on my show. And I can only aspire the Kelley Show to be anything like Irish Stew, because you guys are my heroes. You guys really inspired me to do this in video format. So thank you once again. And folks, if you would like to be on a future Kelley Show, please do write into us today. We have the contact information down here. Looky, with your name, your contact information, a bit about your story, but more importantly, why you would like to be on the Kelley Show. And don't forget to subscribe today to the Kelley Show and share today's conversation with Martin and John and the Irish Stew podcast. And we have had wonderful guests on the Kelley Show. So subscribe, share with your friends, your network, and stay tuned, because November is going to be big here. In November, we are honoring our global veterans in times of war and peace. And I have got the lineup of guests worldwide, and that is something you do not want to miss. So for now, peace and love. Gareth, take it away.
If you would like to be a guest on The Kelley Show, send us an email with your contact information, where in the world you are, and a brief description of the story you'd like to share today.
Thank you.